Hello, everyone. Welcome to Pro Panels by Inside Towers. I'm John Celentano, business editor at Inside Towers, the newsletter that magically appears in your inbox every morning with news and information about the wireless infrastructure business. I'm your host and moderator for today's presentation. Our topic today is wireless workforce development. The subject is timely and getting a lot of attention, and for good reason. Building and operating wireless networks with the infrastructure that supports these networks takes a lot of time, money, and labor. Today, the wireless business is in one of its most active phases in recent years, and that high-level activity is projected to continue for a number of years. You know the drivers. 5G builds are ramping into full swing, both on a nationwide and local level. C-band deployments will begin in late 2021 and continue for several years. Small cells with fiber are sprouting everywhere. There's a new emphasis on rural broadband, and other infrastructure funding programs are being proposed. The big challenge with all of this activity is, do we have enough skilled field technicians to do all the work? The industry estimates that thousands more will be needed to be trained and placed on the job. New federal legislation is being enacted to help underwrite more job training in conjunction with the numerous industry training and development programs already in place. So that's what we want to talk about. I'm joined by a distinguished panel with a unique mix of industry experience and expertise to bring some interesting perspectives to the topic. Before I introduce the panel, a few housekeeping items. This webinar is being recorded Thursday, June 3rd, 2021, and is scheduled to run for an hour, give or take a few minutes. We will notify you when the recording is posted to our website. All attendees are on mute. However, we welcome your questions at any time during the discussion. You can submit your questions via the Q&A tab on the Zoom bar at the bottom of your screen. We will get to as many questions as time allows. And we would like your feedback. Be on the lookout for a couple of audience polls as we go along. To help us, the panel, get to know who you are so we can address your particular interests, we're posting a poll now so you can tell us where you work in the wireless industry. Now let's meet our panel. Joining us today are Cesar Ruiz, President and CEO of Learning Alliance Corporation. Todd Schlekeway, President and CEO of NATE, the Communications Infrastructure Contractors Association. Heather Gastelum, Senior Manager, National Site Safety at T-Mobile. And Jonathan Eastman, President of VIKOR Teleconstruction. Welcome, everyone.
How are you, John?
Good. I'd like each of you to give us a high-level view on your organizations and your respective roles. Cesar, why don't you start us off?
Sure, John. So Cesar Ruiz, Learning Alliance Corporation, President and CEO, and primarily the area of focus for us here at LAC is to really try to understand the industry, understand the competencies, support a program that does provide that next generational technician. And fortunately, we've been very blessed to work with many employers and carriers like T-Mobile, where they're providing a lot of support and feedback in order to ensure that the program and the graduates from the Learning Alliance Corporation can actually be assets to employers within the industry. So specifically, that's who we are and that's what we do.
Excellent. Good. Well, welcome. Todd, give us a high level on NATE.
Thank you, John. It's a pleasure to be here today. And it's a pleasure to be on the panel with Jonathan and Cesar and Heather. NATE is proud to call all three of their respective companies members of NATE. So NATE, as many are aware, we have 1,066 member companies. We have members in all 50 states and 13 foreign countries. So it's just been a very dynamic time to be in the industry. And looking forward to the discussion. Workforce development along with safety are our top two priorities right now as an organization. And I'm really looking forward to the dialogue today, John.
Great. Thank you, Todd. Heather, welcome.
Hi, I'm Heather Gastelum, as John mentioned, the Senior Manager of National Site Safety. So my team is responsible for all the vendor crew safety, for all the work that's being performed on our behalf out in the field. Most of you are familiar with T-Mobile. We're the second largest wireless carrier. We operate in the US, Puerto Rico, and the US Virgin Islands. I've been in the wireless industry for 26 years, primarily in some form or fashion in construction. I'm on the telecommunication industry registered apprenticeship Advisory Board, the National Wireless Safety Alliance Board of Governors. I sit on the TIA TR14 Structural Committee, NATE and TIA's UAS Committee, and am a proud member of the Women in NATE Committee.
Excellent. Thanks for joining us today. Jonathan, give us a scoop on VIKOR.
Yeah, John, thanks. I appreciate being here. I shared Todd's sentiment. Excited to kind of learn with this group today, those listening, and the comments that are made there and comments that are made from the other individuals on the panel. So look forward to that. I'm John Eastman, or Jonathan Eastman. I am the president here at VIKOR Teleconstruction. I think, obviously, most probably know, but build and maintain a wireless infrastructure. But as I think about that a little bit more, what do we really do? What are we really about here at VIKOR? What drives us? And I think as our CEO, Craig Snyder, has coined it, is we build committed and efficient crews. And I think that's really a focus for us here at VIKOR is building those committed and efficient crews and figuring out how to do that best, which I think plays perfectly into this conversation today. So I'm excited to be here and learn from everybody today.
Great, thank you, John. We're glad you could join us. So Todd, Nate had conducted a worker survey earlier in the year, and with some interesting findings. Maybe you could highlight those and what kind of responses do you think are being considered? And as well, I know you're in Washington today, but Nate was a signatory to Industry Organization Coalition that submitted a letter to the president regarding workforce development. Maybe you could highlight where we stand with that and what programs are being considered.
You bet. Well, I'll address our workforce development strategic plan first, John. The survey you alluded to was a really integral component to our workforce strategic plan as an association. And so we commissioned a survey late in 2020, and it was completed by many of the employers in the industry who are NATE members who employ tower techs and other professionals across the industry. And the findings were not surprising, but it reinforced everything we've been talking about. And that is, we identified a need for 14,693 more workers. And that's just under NATE's umbrella. That's not counting the members who aren't the companies who don't belong to NATE. So of that 14,693 workers needed, we extrapolated, John, 70% are of the technician, the foreman, the antenna in line, the field-based personnel that really are the men and women who enable connectivity in the country. So we are able to take that data, John, as we're speaking to members of Congress, as we're speaking to government agencies, and we'll talk later about this, but as we're approaching community colleges and technical institutes, because we can say, look, here's the need in your region of the country. Here are the employers in your region of the country. It's a perfect marriage. And so that survey really got our workforce development initiative off on a running start. Now, to your second point on the coalition letter, Nate was privileged to be one of 10. We joined a total of 11 organizations, the most influential telecom and wireless organizations in this country, right at the onset of the Biden administration and the start of the 117th Congress. We banded together, we wrote a letter with the core message of, we support all the investments and the work of the investments into broadband infrastructure, but there has to be a workforce to sustain it, and there has to be training programs to sustain it. So what that letter did, John, is it allowed us to get off to a great start with both the new administration and the leaders of both parties in both the House and Senate. And as we'll talk about later, we're starting to see that manifest in some of the legislation that's been introduced.
Okay.
That's bipartisan.
Good. That's excellent. Very good. Yes, we will get into that a little later on as well. But Heather, you're on the front line in many respects with all of this. Just to clarify, does T-Mobile have its own workforce per se, or is it all contracted?
Well, we have hundreds of our own field technicians that help maintain our network, but we have hundreds more of third-party crews that build and maintain our first to 5G network. So we contract out all of the antenna and line installation, the primary construction related activity, and antenna swap out activity.
Excellent. So you mentioned you participate on boards with TIRAP and NWSA. How do you bring those programs into what you're doing at T-Mobile?
Well, I mean, they're a perfect concert with each other. TIRAP helps train and develop workers for our industry, works to generate and maintain relationships with hiring firms. And then NWSA is the credentialing body to test those individual workers to ensure that they have maintained and retained what they've been taught and learned to perform for us. So, you know, consider you're trying to promote somebody to a foreman, for example, and you're the hiring company and you're the general contractor that's trying to grow their crew count. You need a foreman for every single crew that you roll out onto those crews. Well, maybe you want to test them and make sure that they're competent and capable to perform foreman level tasks by running them through the NWSA practical and written examinations.
Okay, very good. Now you have in place what is called a Next Tech Diversity Program. I know diversity is a big issue among many employers and organizations, but can you describe that program and how you work with Cesar and his company to make that happen?
Yeah, I'm sure Cesar is going to elaborate a lot more, but TIRAP also works with Learning Alliance. So we developed and launched the Next Tech Diversity Program in partnership with Ericsson and with Learning Alliance. And TIRAP, like I said, also works with Learning Alliance to train up individual workers. And this program is focused primarily on the diverse workforce that our industry is lacking in tremendously, especially if we are able to tap into more of them, you know, any individual workers who might be interested in figuring out all the different roles and responsibilities and career paths that are available in our industry in order to make that pocket computer that they're all carrying around work. And a lot of people have a phone, they understand how the phone works, they think they understand how the phone works, but they've never considered our industry as a career path. And so this new organization and this new focus is going to help make sure that we're talking to other individuals that haven't considered our industry as a viable career path and help train them up, place them. And again, Cesar can talk more about that aspect, but we've already had individuals graduate out of the program. We've had a successful placement rate out of the graduating program, and we've put a substantial amount of investment into continuing to grow that Next Tech list of resources, really.
Excellent. So Cesar, why don't you elaborate a little bit on the program and what it's designed to do?
Sure, John. So specifically, it's to try to bring that skilled workforce. That is a diverse workforce. So specifically, what we've tried to do is every quarter for the past couple of years, we have worked with great employers, you know, that we support. We support over 300 employers. So we've been able to gather a lot of information, and we've been able to really massage our curriculum to ensure that the men and women that do graduate the program, that they're able to go into the workforce and be really gain sustainable work and become an asset to the employers. Next Tech really was just a great opportunity where T-Mobile really said, you know what, we believe in diversity, therefore we're going to back it. And we're going to back it with support and capital in order to ensure that we do get diverse workforce into our industry. So we've been very blessed that we are now into our second program. So far from our graduating classes, we have 100% placement rate. And right now we're at around 5% retention. So everyone's basically getting employment within 2 weeks. Many times they're already been interviewed and they're beginning the background check and the drug test process while they're in the program. And we're now really taking the Next Tech Diversity Program to another level, John, because one of the things that we're learning is that to be a technician, you have to be able to do more than just climb, right? We're now getting into a true 5G technician where you have to understand small cell. You have to understand that there's something greater than the tower and the 200-foot radius around it, correct? So we've now expanded the program to ensure that every Next Tech graduate has the greatest opportunity to go into an employer and have a slew of skill sets, so that if the industry was ever to shift and tower technicians need to be moved around, they have multiple skills in order to support that employer in multiple areas. And we've been very blessed that we've had great placement rates, good retention. Historically, if you look over the last 3 years, we are retaining 84.1% of our graduates with our employers at the 1 year mark. Last year, it got a little bit better, but those are great numbers considering an industry that has been really plagued with a retention obstacle. And I believe that what LAC is trying to do is demonstrate that there's a methodology, a curriculum, and a framework that, as Todd mentioned, can be shared with other academic institutions, can be shared with colleges and universities, so that at a local level, organizations have the ability to really homegrown from their grassroots of their community.
You know, you made a good point about the skill set. I don't know if there's a misconception, but when people talk about tower technicians, the first thing they think of is the people just climbing up on towers. But in fact, they're climbing up there with a skill set that encompasses testing and installing and testing RF, installing and testing fiber, and other parameters as well. So it's when we say technician, we really mean a fully rounded capability.
Correct. I mean, take it one step further, the ability to understand everything from power and electricity, from a lighting system to swap outs or decommissioning or commissioning of RF equipment, or really just tower erection from the ground up. It's a very broad spectrum of competencies that need to be supported.
So Jonathan, I write about the wireless infrastructure business, but you actually do it. So what kind of challenges are you finding in terms of hiring and retaining staff? And what do you look for with somebody who's just coming into your organization for the first time?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think first maybe start with, what do we look for? What are the incoming qualifications that we have? I think it's for us, we really found that we take a lot of pride in taking a guy in that has never done it before, and training them and teaching them in the way that we like to teach, to ensure both quality and most importantly safety. And so we actually enjoy having guys come in that don't have any experience. Now, part of that is necessity is the mother of invention, right? So we don't have just a ton of skilled laborers walking in that have this experience as tower technicians that have been doing it for years. And I think everybody in this industry deals with that. And so we needed to figure out a way to make sure that we could grow at the rate that we wanted to grow at, while still never forsaking that quality and that safety that is an absolute must for us as a company. And so for us, it's been a combination of different things. But what do we look for with a guy coming in? Any mechanical aptitude that they have has been a huge positive. Anybody with military background has been a huge positive for us. Guys who are used to working long hours, have had some experience in construction, even if it's not exactly working at heights. But then that does play into that very important piece, is they got to be comfortable working at heights. So finding guys and going through our onboarding and the authorized climb that we do to make sure that they are going to be able to handle themselves at that height. We look at other things of just being chemical free as a way to say it, as somebody coming in, making sure that we have the right kind of match for us as a company. And those are all things that we've kind of learned through the years that we have to pay attention to up front to ensure some of that retention later on. I think the biggest thing, though, those are some specific things to look at, but I think the biggest thing that we really look at, and is really important to us that we've learned through the years, is we have to find the people that fit us, that fit our culture. We can train and teach the skill sets. We've been doing it for a long time, and we'll continue to do that. And we'll learn how to do it better and better each year. But we've got to find the guys that fit our culture. We don't necessarily care about them being the best, But it's got to be, I think, kind of, we affectionately call it, some of us around here is the OKGs, our kind of guys. Who are the people that fit us and fit what we do, and find those people in that interview process. And if you can do that, then that leads to a successful first step, which leads to greater retention.
So Heather, when T-Mobile hires firms to do the field work for you, you're expecting those companies and those teams to be already qualified and serviceable and ready to go, right?
Absolutely. We're hiring them as subject matter construction experts specific to our industry. Training is the requirement of the employer of their employee, and it's task specific. So it's we expect people to be competent and capable to do the work that we're hiring them to perform. It's unfortunate that we do continue to see safety related incidents occur out in our industry, because we have some solid companies that have been doing this for years and are absolute rock stars in training up their crew members, like VIKOR, that John just touched on. However, there are newer companies in our industry that rely solely on third-party training firms, yet the employer is the only one that can deem an individual worker competent and capable to do that job. So it's this kind of catch-22. And so the newer companies coming into this space may or may not be 100% understanding what their role and responsibilities are in order to build to our industry specific standards. And John also, just to elaborate on one of his touch points, military veterans have been a phenomenal resource for our industry. Later this year, T-Mobile will pass the 1 million mark for funds that we've provided to Warriors for Wireless, and they have partnerships with over 400 companies in our industry, and they're providing direct resources. So if you're looking to hire, Warriors for Wireless is rolling people out. They've had over 2,600 vets that they've been able to connect with jobs in our industry since, I want to say, about 2018. So that's another phenomenal option for training. It's a collective industry effort in order to make sure that we have enough trained workforce to do all the work that we have available out there industry-wide.
Yeah, and I think underlying all that, John, you touched on it. The quality of the work is paramount here. The ability for crews to go in and do the job and do it right the first time, and then leave the site operational the way it's intended to be. That seems to me that's a bit of a challenge to try to meet those high quality standards.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting point, and there's a lot of different angles you could attack that. But I think for us, the way that we kind of maintain that quality and still stay focused on the safety is really, it's the people that you work with. And what I mean by that is not just people here at VIKOR, but what customers are you working for? Who do you have a good relationship with them? Are they the types of customers that understand that quality and safety being at focus for a contractor is something that has a cost to it? And are they willing to pay that extra cost for that type of quality work and safe work being accomplished? And so I think for us, we've kind of had to find those customers, who are they? And sometimes you got to walk away from a customer just because they don't support the exact same values and things that you support as a company. So that can be tough to do that, but you also have to do that. And we found that as we do that, everything's fine. Everything works out. You stay focused on the quality, you stay focused on safety, that those things always win out over time. And then I think the other two things that are important to mention with that focus on quality and safety and how they live together is just understanding the reality of it is that everybody that's listening on this call owns a business. You got to make money. There's got to be a return on your investment. And so for us, we've really learned and understood that through the years, there is a very significant return on investment for every dollar spent towards creating a safe workforce and a workforce that is competent and qualified and can do high quality work. And so I think for us, that return on investment, we've seen it, and the money that we've spent on those things we've received that return. And then I think lastly, the for that quality to be there is putting the right people in the right places. So when you get good people and you hang on to them, continue to give them opportunities, put them in a position and in a place where they can teach and instruct other people. There's been a lot of that tribal knowledge that has been passed down through the years at VIKOR, and I think that's important. Don't go away from that. As much as you're trying to do everything else to make it better and to improve that quality and that safety through whatever other methods you may use, that tribal knowledge is extremely important. But you have to, as an employer, you got to put those people in the right positions where they can impact more than just 2 people, but they can impact maybe 6 or maybe 15 or 20. And I think as we've done that throughout the years, we've had just great people that have had a tremendous impact on the company.
Excellent. Well, look, let's go out to our audience with a question and see how they respond. So the question is the telecom industry doing what is needed to develop its workforce? And let's see how the audience responds. 4 questions, not enough, sort of, yes, but the problem is acknowledged, and yes, the industry is being proactive. So let's see what the kind of responses they come back with. So we talked about a couple of programs that are in place, and Todd, you mentioned that there's funding being made available to put towards training and development programs. And here, just before we get further here, the audience thinks 46% think, yeah, we're sort of addressing the issue, but it's the pace is still too slow. How does that jibe with what we're seeing? Heather, do you think that's a fair statement?
Yeah, I do. I mean, look at construction in general, building houses, building commercial buildings, building in our industry. Trades are lacking in resources across all of construction. So this is not necessarily surprising to see. There's never enough. We have a ton of work available out there. We don't have enough resources to do it. So this is why the industry collectively been working on workforce development for the last few years together. Going to DC, talking about funding. Todd will touch on some of that as well. I completely agree with that, unfortunately.
So it's not a matter that we're not putting out the effort. It's just that it takes a long time to bring in the people, get them trained, and get them out doing the real work.
Well, John touched on it. It's not for everybody. Working at heights is not for everybody. Being out in the elements is not for everybody. Some people like to be indoors and they don't want to be outside. Other people love this job. They love being outside. They love the view at 200 feet in the air. The individuals that work in our industry love what they do. And so it's getting them to talk to more people. It's talking to military veterans that are a little bit, maybe they appreciate a little bit more adrenaline and are willing to work at elevation. Maybe it's going after rock climbers. Maybe it's talking down into the junior high and the high school age. I've worked with a couple of groups where we focus on STEM career conversations specific to the girls, and the younger you can talk to them and let them know about all the potential career opportunities that are available in our industry, the better. And that's something collectively the entire industry can be doing.
Yeah, good. So Todd, give us a little more insight into the types of programs that are being contemplated and how that could positively affect what we're doing here.
Yeah, thanks, John. I think it's really important to the industry watching this and those who are going to listen to it later to understand, the current environment in Congress is fluid, but there's 2 bills that I want to highlight. The first one is the IMPACT Act. That's an acronym for Improving Minorities, Participants, and Careers in Telecom Act. And what that would do is create funding that would go to historically Black colleges and universities, tribal colleges, and minority serving institutions. And organizations, associations, and companies could partner with them to develop the training programs that are telecom specific. So that's one bill that's bipartisan, I might add. And then the Telecom Skilled Workforce Act, which is also bipartisan, that would streamline kind of the collaboration between the federal government, state workforce boards and organizations, higher education, industry, as well as there's an apprenticeship play there that we think would support industry apprenticeships. And that bill would create a working group to try to streamline the flow of communication and funding. So the Impact Act and Telecom Skilled Workforce Act are two bills to remember. Now, the caveat is both of those bills were recently included in a more comprehensive package, which is called the United States Innovation and Competition Act. And that's being run by Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, another bipartisan legislation. That's really the vehicle to watch for all the listeners today is the U.S. Innovation and Competition Act, because what that's going to do, John, is carry the workforce bills, and we hope across the finish line. And so keep an eye out for the United States Innovation and Competition Act. And the other thing I'd like to highlight is the recently released budget by the administration, which is just a starting point. That's not the final budget. I was told the other day that there's up to 100 million more allocated for apprenticeships in that budget. And so it would be Nate's hope and WIA's hope and the others in the industry that some of that money would hopefully flow to the industry specific apprenticeship program, TIRAP. So between those two bills, the budget and monitoring the back and forth negotiations over this infrastructure bill, Nate has been kept very busy in the Beltway. And we just want to see a workforce funding and training component to come alongside any package that ultimately passes.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Cesar, how do you get into, you know, from what Todd is saying, and it looks like money is going to be available. There's a lot of support for this training program, but how do you develop a curriculum that really fits? It's not just as easy as saying, well, you know, we have tower technicians we're going to train to climb, and but it seems to me it's much more comprehensive than that.
Yes, John, I believe that it is. Specifically, everyone on this panel also shares that same sentiment. The way that we're looking at curriculum development is each and every grant that we support or that we participate in is really to support two parts of the industry. The first part is how do we help employers get that skilled workforce? So getting people into the industry, focusing on the marketing, ensuring that at-risk youth are aware, that anyone that's transitioning out of the military, that has an MOS that does not translate very well to civilian life, that they're made aware of these careers and opportunities. But then also building on the back end, once they're employed, how do we give them the skills, the certifications, the competencies, the related technical instruction in order to ensure that there's a growth path? Simply because a lot of employers, you know, that you're going to hear from, they deal with losing technicians because another competitor is offering $1 more. And I believe that if there was an apprenticeship framework in place that an employer has set to their employees that says, with each of these milestones, you're going to obtain this much of an increase. So as you gain competencies and you do your related technical instruction and you demonstrate the skills, you're going to gain more. So I believe that we're building content on both sides to gain people into the workforce, to give them the necessary skills so that when they graduate, they go to a VIKOR or any other employer, that those certifications are transferable so that the employer doesn't take on the expense of having to, you know, bring them up to light. How do we make all of those credentials transferable from an institution like LAC to a VIKOR as an example? And then when they're employed, you know, as an employer, how do we give you the related technical instruction, the learning management system that manages both the applicant and really the employer, so that through the course of an entire year, there is a very friendly form of learning that occurs, so that if there's a rain day, someone can just grab their trusty phone, basically get on their system and start to practice, whether it's through our virtual reality or whether it's through our curriculum, some of the muscle memory and the competencies and the skills that are necessary to achieve that next milestone. That makes a win-win for everyone involved.
Yeah.
The employer gets a better skilled workforce. The candidate can potentially make more money. So ultimately, all of our curriculum development funds are really focused on that in a very adult learning type of approach, so that it's nano-based, short, specific, direct, competency-driven, supporting any any kind of an apprenticeship outcome that is associated with the TIRAP framework.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the phone. We had a couple of questions we were asking about how technology is being incorporated here as part of the training process.
It is. I think COVID taught everyone that you have to be tech friendly. So the days of having all of your training in-house in a facility like this that is extremely expensive really doesn't, we don't have to think in those parameters anymore. Technology just really gives the opportunity so that instead of being a cost center day because it's a rain day, now that candidate can go through our gaming system, our virtual reality system, they can practice that competency in a safe environment to build the muscle memory so that when they have to do it in a live environment, it's not the first time. They've already gone through some of those reps and ultimately having a greater skilled workforce. So tech is really helping a lot on that. Anything having to do with our VR, virtual reality, or augmented reality structures, they're going to be key in the future development of retaining a workforce.
Is the training geared to bring the individuals up to that certification level? Is that sort of the ticket, as it were, to gain a top-notch position, or at least to be able to work in the industry? I'm referring to the NWSA TT1 and TTT1 and TTT2 certifications as an example, but is that almost a prerequisite going forward that technicians need to have to be able to work in the industry? Cesar, maybe you could comment on that, and then John, I'd like to hear you as well.
No, I have no problem commenting about that. I can speak for a while, John, so you may have to pause me. But specifically, I believe that, yes, on the entry level part is the authorized climber, the rescue, the capstan, the hoisting, the RF, the EME, all those basic and fundamental certifications. Yes, they're a requirement. But growth and development, the TT1, the NWSA TT1, TT2 are going to be critical. The way that we've built it is we've built it as a 4-year model as we are attempting to build a 2-year degree so that someone has the opportunity to start, gain the necessary certifications, get into the career, and then grow all the way up to a foreman level. So the certifications that NWSA has put together, they're right online, and all the competencies from any of the TIRAP models support it. So I believe it's going to be a very united front where educators and employers are going to have to really look at how do we build that path of communication so that you don't leave this company, me as an employer, for someone else simply because someone's putting $1 in front of your face right now. If you're already 6 months into your 1-year apprenticeship, why don't you stick around, finish the 6 months, and take that $1.50 increase? So I think it's a lot of education that we have to do for that growth and development from TT1 to TT2 to a top hand to a foreman.
John, is that pretty much the development path, or how do you handle it at VIKOR?
Yeah, no, I think it's good. I really agree with everything that Cesar is saying and the pathway for that. And I think the importance of painting a pathway for your employees is so critical from a retention standpoint. I had somebody pop in here the other day in my office and was excited because he can see his path forward now. He can see how he's going to make a long-term career out of this. He wants to be at VIKOR forever. But without seeing that pathway forward, that's really difficult for people to understand. Well, how can I truly have a career in this? What comes next? What steps are coming next? What qualifications are required? And I think that we are probably as an industry doing a better job of that than has been done. But I think, I know for us at VIKOR, we're doing a better job of that right now. We've had a group of individuals working on that very thing. We've got, Todd, our director of training, who's 30 plus years in the industry, and Brandon Foster, who's part of the training department, and Ben Holland. Both those guys have over 13 years. You got our kind of field leader who has 10 years, Rylan Jensen, and has about 10 years of experience in this industry, and many more in construction, and look at our construction managers. Well, all these guys are a part of laying out that path forward. So there are some basic things that we have of, when you come in, you got to be an authorized climber. Okay, when you're done with that, we do have it 90 days for us in our company. We bring everybody back to go through our competent climber training. After you've been enough time, you've gone through that training, you're a competent climber. We've got our quarterly visits that our training department will make to make sure that our guys are triple T certified, whether that be triple T1, triple T2, whatever that may be, and all the other training that goes along with that. And I think because of a lot of what we're seeing with what has already been mentioned with 5G and a lot of the efforts, we're really getting into a lot more of that technical training. And we are doing a lot of stuff in-house that has really been kind of the trademark for VIKOR for a long time, is reaching out to some third parties like the Learning Alliance Center. I've talked with Cesar and they're doing some awesome things. Learning from other people. What is everybody else doing? Let's collaborate. Let's have some knowledge share. And let's figure out how to help our workforce to be the best that they can be. So that technical part we're really getting into now, and that comes into the LMS training. Some of the things that you can do there, the on-the-job training is so critical, so important. But how are we as an employer verifying those things that they're done? So we're checking a box and saying that yes, this employee is certified in this, whatever it is, whatever that trade is, whatever that skill set is. And that's the stuff that we're spending a ton of time focusing on right now, all with the intent of just helping our employees to have a pathway forward, to see how they can truly be committed to what we're doing and to work efficiently and to do a job that they can be proud of at the end of the day. And so all of those efforts, they all kind of play back into those committed and efficient crews. It's about trying to make their life better, paint that pathway forward. And everything that Cesar has mentioned is a part of it. And we have to tie in those things. And lastly, I'll say on that is tying in that financial incentive. Cesar talked about a guy will leave for $1 more. Well, we shouldn't have that happening. You know, that shouldn't be happening. But it all comes back to that pathway. And money is important. Money talks. So as people gain these qualifications, well, here's that money that you get to have now that you deserve, because you put in the effort and energy to do that. Now here's the next step and the next step, and here's the financial reward that comes along with that. And we really believe that that's very critical at VIKOR.
Is there a, I don't want to say established, but is it understood that with certain certification levels, there's a certain pay grade or pay scale? Because we've got some questions regarding pay and, you know, the point you made, Cesar, about people will change jobs for $1 is, you know, I think the pay incentive has to be part and parcel of all this as well. And I'm wondering, is there a consistency in how these field workers are being compensated? I know we had an earlier question that the pay scales for that group was set at the market rate plus 5%. I don't know what's appropriate, but you know, what are you seeing on an ongoing basis in terms of how these field workers are being compensated?
I guess, and I can jump in with an initial comment. I think it's a dealer calls it. And what I mean by that is whatever the company decides to do is what's doing. I don't know that there's a real consistent theme for rewarding financially individuals for that further certification and qualification that they receive. I think it's really been up to, from everything that I know, to the company themselves, determining how do they want to attack that, how do they want to go about doing that.
Heather, do you get onto that at any? Sorry, Cesar. Heather, do you run into that at all, or is that?
Well, we hear about it for sure, especially when we're investigating safety-related issues. You know, somebody that's brand new with a company and the third day on the job, they wind up with a safety-related incident, and they had maybe been out of the industry for 6 months, or they just jumped ship for a little bit more money. So we hear about it when things go wrong on the back end. If an employee understands that their company cares about training them in safe work practices, they tend to stick around. You know, TIRAP was developed with joint venture with the Department of Labor, and we work to develop, I think we're up to 11 occupations that train specifically those new workers to those occupations that are anywhere from a tower technician to, overhead and underground utilities. And, you know, keeping in mind that, you know, one of the NATE former chairmen loves to say, this industry is the only one where you start at the top and work your way to the bottom. So if you're not giving them the opportunity for career growth, and it's true. And because we now have that foreman examination, you know, if they're a tower technician level 1, they have to have that on the job training. You can't just call somebody competent and capable to conduct a class 4 rigging without ensuring that they fully understand all of the requirements for a class 4 rigging setup and execution of that type of work. So giving them that path forward and letting them know and understand that, hey, you're working towards becoming a crew lead, you're working towards becoming a foreman, you're working your way down off the tower to become a PM in the office, running crews on your own is critical. It's important.
Cesar, I'm sorry, you had a comment as well.
No, it's actually, I'm going to piggyback on what Heather just said. Specifically, when you look at TIRAP has it set up in a format where as you gain competencies and you maybe make some achievements, the employer, as John said, gets to state, I value this skill set, and in exchange, I'm going to reward you as following. Historically, before LAC started working in telecom, we were supporting other apprenticeship programs, both in manufacturing and in IT. And I can tell you from experience that the employers that had the best retention were the ones that actually built an apprenticeship framework, because TIRAP in any apprenticeship program, TIRAP has a really good structure for it. You, the employee, you get to dictate. You get to dictate the milestones. You can dictate the competencies that apply to your very specific secret sauce of what makes your organization special. Many times we forget to put in what is going to be the wage increase. And even if it's 50 cents on the dollar, whatever the case may be, giving some sort of a monetary reward is better than nothing at all. And again, historically, from our experience in other industries, that has really helped retention and morale. That's the one thing I really want to make sure is that apprenticeship helps you build morale, and morale and the ability to see your future and how it's going to evolve. And you incorporate certifications that are owned by the individual, like an NWSA certification. If you align it, you have your apprenticeship framework, you have your certifications, and you provide the capital incentive. It's a win-win for all three members: the industry, the employer, and the employee himself or herself.
Just to be clear on these training programs, is it who I guess the question that has come up, who pays for them? I mean, does the individual who's getting the training, are they responsible for that? Is their employer, if they're working for a company, do they pay for these programs, or some of these government funding programs come into play? Cesar, maybe you could elaborate a little bit on how these,
Absolutely. I can talk about
training
that.
gets paid for.
Absolutely. So I believe that that's the responsibility of the employer. The good news is yes, Todd has communicated there's going to be a slew of capital that will be made readily available. Some of it will be for curriculum development. The other parts will be to provide the employer with some support, because when you send someone for training, there is the opportunity cost that person will not be revenue generating for that day or that week or however long that may be. So there is an expense to the employer. And there is a lot of funding that is readily available. We're very fortunate that we support 7 different grants. And in those grants, with the mass majority of the employers that we support, it doesn't cost them anything, primarily because the funds are there for that workforce development component. And that's one of the key things, is that employers should really look at the different funds that are available and the institutions that you work with, hopefully a local community or state college, that will be really well tied into those capital dollars that are available, so that you can work in order to get whatever funding is necessary to support that professional development path for your employees. But it is, in my opinion, the responsibility of the employer, not the employee. And I believe it's just a great retention tool that we should incorporate into our operating expenses in our P&L.
Right. Heather, the next tech diversity program you set up with Cesar's organization, is that intended for T-Mobile employees, or is that available to people that are contractors to T-Mobile?
Yeah, that's available to everybody. We're looking for other partners. They could be competitors even, that want to work with the next tech diversity program to help build. I mean, the entire industry benefits when the industry has more workers. So it's not, we're not just looking for our own employee base. We're looking for additional workforce to support our build program, because we third party all of our construction services out. So it's, it's a symbiotic relationship that it requires everybody to be focused. And back to the TIRAP apprenticeship piece of the puzzle, because it's a competency-based training, if an employer signs up with TIRAP, Deb Bennett is the director of the apprenticeship program at tyrap.com. And if you sign up, you get trained workers that you then get to mold into your employer-based safety program. Give them that on-the-job training, give them a job, and allow them to start working through your program. You're getting somebody that's not just fresh off the street. They've gone through an actual training program. So it's an excellent resource to build your own crew base.
Excellent. And how many? It's an active program now. Typically, how many people would you have working their way through the program at any point?
You know, it's growing. I know that that we aim to have hundreds of candidates that go through this program, and you know, by 2025, I believe there's the goals in place for hundreds, if not more. So we're not limiting ourselves with how many that we are hoping go through the different graduating classes.
Right, very good. Well, we have one more audience poll we'd like to put out to the audience. Basically, the question is, are the workforce development programs working? And so let's see what the audience comes back with. So our questions are: too much to do for short-term results, more regulatory carrier contractor cooperation needed, yes, but tough to keep up with demand, and absolutely more skilled workers are coming on stream. So.
Well, and while you're waiting for that poll to come in, just to emphasize a question that you asked Cesar and his response, it's the employer's legal obligation to ensure that their workforce is properly trained. So it's not, that's a federal OSHA requirement. That's not an optional nice to have.
Well said,
so
Heather.
Here we go. So 45% think that more cooperation is needed, and I would suggest from the discussion on this panel that there's a lot of cooperation going on, but there's a view that more needs to be done. And secondly, that but it's tough to keep up with demand, and I think that's a reality that we're facing right now. So thank you, audience, for the feedback. Any comments? Todd, what do you think of that?
Yeah, John, I think that's pretty accurate. I think it's important to point out, you know, the role that community colleges and technical institutes can play to help fill this pipeline. So much of the training in our industry has been done internally by third-party training companies, you know, and we have some great ones, as Nate members, Cesar's company being one. But a big part of our strategic plan, one of the smartest things Nate did was hire Dr. Gemma Frock, who was the architect of the Aiken Technical College program in South Carolina, the first program at an institution like that. She retired, we hired her, and we are now working with 8 different colleges in 7 different states, ranging from 2 in South Dakota, Wisconsin, Indiana, Ohio, North Carolina, Oklahoma, and Mississippi. So the program in Oklahoma is up and running. The program in North Carolina, Wake Tech, just announced today that they're starting in August. And then the other programs are at varying stages of development. So what we're doing with our workforce committee is we are creating a turnkey curriculum package for the T1, the entry-level tower tech, where they will go through the training, have all these embedded certifications included in the training, OSHA 10-hour, and most importantly, the NWSA T1. And then they'll be off into the workforce, preferably will be hired by a NATE member company in that region close to the community college. So I wanted to point out the role that we think community colleges and technical institutes can play, John, because that's important. We need more of them, number one. Number two, they can then help market our industry. They're the ones who are often in the high schools. They're the ones talking to, they're the ones who employ admissions officers and marketing personnel.
Right.
They can help the industry build our workforce just by having programs at those institutions. So that's a big part of what we're working on right now at NATE.
Well, that's a key point, you know, with how, if there are people who may be interested in being employed in the industry, how do they find out about these programs? You mentioned that the schools and training institutes themselves have an outreach to promote to prospective students, I guess, and candidates. But are we doing enough as an industry to let people know these programs are available, how to sign up for them? Heather, you mentioned tyrap.com, you know, that people need to know about these if they are interested, or if they want to improve their skill sets, where do they go? So what would be sort of the first step that they would take? Yes, Cesar, maybe you could elaborate on that a little bit.
I believe that you got to begin with your associations.
Okay.
When you really think about it, TIRAP has a great program. When in doubt, you can always just contact Deb Bennett and she will very gladly guide you through the different programs that exist. I also believe that when you look at what NATE is doing, they have done just an incredible job of really putting this program together. So a lot of the content already exists, so that you can begin with NATE. NATE will be able to guide you with the different organizations that do exist and some of the colleges that they're working with. They've done a lot of progress over the past couple of years. On my end, you could also reach out to Learning Alliance Corporation if you'd like to hear from an organization that is currently doing it and is more than willing and able to share our experiences and what we've learned from our employers, the curriculum that we've built, how we're making it available to whether it's a college or whether it's an employer. Our systems are set up fully turnkey so that if you were to take on TIRAP and you want to enter, you don't have to wonder, gee, where am I going to get the related technical instruction? How am I going to track digitally that someone has actually achieved that competency? How are we going to manage the quality to ensure that we can validate whether it's pictures or video or in-person confirmation of those competencies? We built a lot of these systems over the last 18 months. So if any employer has any questions, I would recommend TIRAP, NATE, Learning Alliance Corporation.
I think, let me jump in there too,
John.
John.
Go ahead.
We've had some experience and success with that, and Nate's kind of been involved with us and aware of what we're doing with Southeast Tech. And I just want to attest there is a lot of success in engaging those relationships. And probably for us is, how do you get it started? It's a little bit more grassroots or whatever you want to call it, but just go knock on a door and say, hey, this is what we're looking to do. Is this something you guys like to do? And fortunately for us, we found some really great people on the other side of that door, being Southeast Tech, and we're able to engage in some conversation. And we've kind of gone through and beta tested one kind of run of things. It's improved our retention for that group. In fact, doubled it, and so that was exciting. And then now we're reworking it to see how can we make this even more marketable and make others more aware of that opportunity that they have there. And we'd be happy to share any of our lessons learned in that process with anybody as well. So I think it's a great thing that Nate's doing and those efforts and that initiative. And I think it's the future in a lot of ways. I think that it's something that'll start small and will grow more and more.
Excellent. While you've been speaking, we've had questions about how to contact the various organizations, and we've posted online during this discussion the various websites and URLs that they could go to get more information. So your phone might be ringing, so don't be surprised. Well, look, this has been a great discussion. I think we want to wind it down, but I'll give you each an opportunity to make some final comments and share some final thoughts. Heather, what's your takeaway on this?
Sure. You know, as we've discussed, the industry has paths to help you find trained quality workers. So make sure you're leveraging those potential opportunities, and then strive to be a company with a great safety culture, one where the employer does more than simply requires, you know, what's required by federal OSHA and by a contract. Set an example, set an expectation that your employees and your crew members do the right thing even when no one is looking. That level of integrity and safety program is what it takes in any industry to maintain a great safe work culture as well as retain great employees.
Todd, give us your final thoughts here as well.
Yeah, appreciate the opportunity to participate today, John. My takeaway, you know, this is an all hands on deck proposition. This isn't one organization, one company that's going to solve this, but collectively, I don't think we've we have an opportunity to really seize what's in front of us with the legislation that's pending, with the potential funding that's available, with the bipartisan nature of support that we as an industry receive. So some of it just takes time, and all of us can work together and work together to continue to build a pipeline of workers. I'm confident of that. It just may not happen as quick as all of us want it to.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Cesar.
Thanks, John. One key takeaway that I do hope everyone does take from this conversation is the fact that, as Todd just mentioned, as an industry, we have to come together. We have to share. We have to communicate. We have to collaborate. And I truly do hope that the rest of the industry does embrace diversity and inclusion. It's something that is very dear to the Learning Alliance team, and I'm grateful for T-Mobile, Ericsson, who has also been another great partner, that we continue to collaborate. So if, as a network build company, if diversity and inclusion is important and you would like to participate in that, go to the Next Tech website, go to the Learning Alliance website, communicate with me. I'll be more than glad to engage and talk about how do we get that diverse workforce into the industry. And more importantly, once we get them there, let's talk about how do we retain them? How do we build those apprenticeship tie-wrap type of programs? And then how can we at Learning Alliance support you with the curriculum and the learning and development methodologies to ensure that you are successful in that path? And it's not just Learning Alliance Corporation, it is your local college. There's going to be a great article that I just finished writing yesterday that's going to be published in Inside Towers that will give you a very, very clean roadmap with bullet points on the steps that you can take to work with your local school to build that program, and an example of other schools that are also doing a really good job in the industry so that you can see that it already exists. You may not know about it. Education is going to be key. Spread the word.
Excellent. Thank you, Cesar. And we appreciate your contribution to the newsletter. John, you have the last word.
Yeah, I think I really appreciated some of the final comments that Heather and Todd and Cesar have made. And John, appreciate you and your comments today, and Megan, who helped to get the set up with Inside Towers. So I think I just want to touch quickly on some of what was already mentioned as maybe kind of an amen to what was shared today. But I think setting the standard, that kind of rings with me. Set the standard, be a company that sets a standard from a safety standpoint, from a quality standpoint. As we've focused on that at VIKOR, it's been a great blessing to us. And when at times the customer sets a higher standard than we've set, well, we might be a little ticked off that we didn't already set that standard before then, but we're excited to jump to that standard because it's only going to make us better and make everybody better. I think that we've been blessed to have an awesome training facility here that is a 6,000 square foot facility and can do all sorts of training, from anything from a shelter up to the top of a tower, monopole, self-supporter, guide tower, rooftop climbs, path alignment, whatever. There's all sorts of training that we've been able to provide. But I think about that and where we are today, and why did that all start? Why did we have that today? Well, I think our founders, Craig and Bart, and many others as a part of this organization, made a decision a long time ago to be focused on that safety and focused on that quality. And because they created a culture of safety and of quality and putting people first, then we've kind of ended up with these types of things that are investments that they've made that have proven to be a blessing, but a return on investment for the company. And yes, it does take time. It does take time to build to that, but just because you can't see it tomorrow doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. And so I think that's the part where, as we continue to stay focused on safety and quality and decide as a group of people in this industry to be laser focused on that and to say, this is the standard and we're not coming off of that. And then as we bind together as a group and learn from each other and continue to be challenged maybe by one another and to improve, I think that there's nothing that this industry can't do or achieve or accomplish if we're focused on those things. So thanks everybody here today. I learned a lot and appreciate your time.
Well, thank you, panelists, for an excellent discussion, and thank you to our audience participants for listening in today. We will let everyone know when the replay of this presentation is available on our website. And with that, we'll conclude our call today and wish everyone well for the rest of their day. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for the
Thank you,
opportunity,
John.
John.
Thanks, John.
Bye, everyone. Good seeing you again.